What is going on, everybody? In this video, I want to talk about Zoid, which is a really excellent JavaScript suite of tools that was created by PayPal in order to solve a pretty big problem they were having. And that is putting their PayPal buttons on any merchant's website. So there's a lot of security issues that come with that, as well as a lot of different other considerations, which are covered by a blog post that I'm going to link down below. The point is that the Zoid package makes it quite easy and seamless to host one component or one app inside of another one through an iframe, but it abstracts away all the low-level iframe protocols and allows you to treat it like you would any other component. And specifically, we're talking here about a React component, although it is usable with many different other front-end frameworks such as Vue, Glimmer, or just plain vanilla JavaScript. But today I want to talk about React because that's what I use. And I was having a really hard time finding tutorials that showed me how to really do it. There was kind of tutorials that showed like a very simple example, but it didn't really cover how I personally use React. But rather it was just like this this HTML file that had some JSX in it. So you can follow along with me. Also, the source code is in my GitHub repository, and I've also linked an article that kind of walks you through these processes. So let's go over here to VS Code, and we're going to start a new project. I'm going to use the internal terminal. I'm going to call it Create React App Zoid, or Zoid. All right, so inside Zoid, I'm going to create two different frames. One is going to be the parent, and the other is going to be the child. I'm assuming you have Node.js installed, so with that you can do npx create react app, and then the name of the folder. So I'm going to call it parent app. And so the way to think about this is that let's say you create a cool React component. After you've created this simple React widget, you want to put it in your friend's website, or you want to put it in any person's website that wants to use it. Now, there's considerations. There's a reason why maybe you wouldn't want to do it. There are reasons why the other person may not want to do it. Well, what if you have some malicious code in your component? Or what if simply the parent frame doesn't want to be passing around sensitive data in such a way where the child component might use it? So the nice thing that comes with creating a React component is that it's very modular. You can just go and stick it right here. You can reuse it. You can do all kinds of things with it. But React doesn't have a nice, easy way of doing that cross domains, right? You would have to have the source code on your app to actually be able to render that component. On the other hand, you have iframes, which are all about cross domain applications. However, they're far from easy to work with. They're very clunky. And so you have Zoid, which is like bringing the two together in a really great thing. Create React app takes a while to finish. So you're just going to have to wait there. There is a way of doing this without using Create React app twice, but honestly, I've tried doing React apps before without using Create React app, and it just takes so much time, like to set up Webpack and Babel, and I just use CRA out of convenience. I guess that's why they made it, so don't feel guilty. Okay, now that that's finished, let's do it again. But this time, of course, we're going to call it the child app. And the whole idea here, again, is that it's just an app. It could be a widget or anything like that. So we're going to wait for that to create React app. Oh, create React app. Closed fragments all askew. But create React app came and fixed all that. I don't have to deal with anymore Babel or Webpack. Oh, create React app. Yay! It's finished. So the first thing that I want to do here is I want to be able to run both of them at the same time, so they'll be hosted at the same time. So I'm going to go here to my package JSON, and then here it said, since I'm on Windows, I got to go like this, set port equal to 2000. If you know the default React port is 3000. I'm going to show you that they're both working, so I'm going to go here into cd parent app and npm start, and then right here I'm going to do cd child app and npm start. By the way, if you're on Linux or Mac, then all you need to do is just get rid of this and get rid of this. Just kind of, just like any other shell command. Just to make my life a little bit easier, is I'm going to go ahead and change this background color. Just make it something a little bit nicer, or not nicer, but something that's easily distinguishable. So I'm just going to make it like orange instead of just going to make it like that. And then should save it, and here's my React app, and here's my other React app, my orange one. Except now, what I'm going to do is I want to change these titles. So let me go into index.html of this one, and the title, instead of React app, since we're here in child app, we're going to call this guy widget, right? And then let's open up the other index.html, and we will call this guy right here parent app. Okay, so just some simple things to get started, but this will help, I think, when we're ready to mix the two. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about what exactly our component does. Two simple things. One is that we're going to pass something from the parent down to the component, which is going to be like a name. And the other thing is we're also going to pass down a function down to the component that when the component calls that function, it will manifest something on the parent component. So the first place to start is in defining our component. So let's go down here to app.js of the child app, right, of our widget, and let's just start defining. Let's just start defining something. So let's say here, instead of this right here, we'll say, hey, I'm a cool widget. My name is, and then we'll say here props.name. Of course, here we gotta go props. If we don't get props.name, then we'll say undefined. Let's also do another thing. So this will make more sense later. But maybe instead of this learn React thing, what we're going to do is we're going to put like a little input, and then a button, which on click will do something like props dot whatever the function is called, whatever function we pass down func. Okay, we still haven't decided on that, but essentially I'm just going to do the most simplest thing you can think of, right? Which is it's just going to like send a string up. It's going to take a string and it's going to pass down the string. But we can handle that later. So we're going to say call the function on the parent. Okay, let's do a placeholder here. Placeholder equals placeholder. We'll deal with that a little bit later when we have a better idea of what we can expect from the parent. Cool. Hey, I'm a cool widget. My name is undefined. There's a placeholder. It does something on the function. So now we know two things. The widget component is going to receive a prop called name, right here. And it's also going to receive a prop called passDown function, which is a function that it can call. And this works, if you've worked with React, this works the exact same way as a React component. So here's where Zoid comes in. That reminds me, I need to install Zoid. In my parent app, I'm going to say npm I Zoid. I'll also do npm I Zoid here. It's not necessary to have Zoid installed on both the component and the parent. because what ends up happening is that Zoid will just become installed in the component, and then the component is hosted somewhere. So if Zoid library along with the component are bundled together, then the parent can just import that script and can call the component using Zoid without the parent having to have installed anything like Zoid or anything like that. Here in the child app, we're going to create a new file. We'll call it widget.js. And here's where we're going to import Zoid. Import Zoid / this. Now this is very important because we have to use frameworks. Import star as Zoid. So this is pretty much does, and the reason for the frameworks is because we're using React, which you'll see soon. You have to take an additional step to actually turn it from a Zoid component into a React component. So we're going to say let my widget equal Zoid.create, and it takes two required fields. One is tag, which is my fun, no fun here, my widget, and a URL, which, like I said, so we're going to host this now on localhost. So we're going to go http://localhost port 2000 /index.htm, and then we're going to export default my widget. All right, so this is as simplest as it goes. Now we could do something like this, like props, which is going to it's a little bit more involved. I think it goes something like this, where you can pass in the type of the props, and thereby it does like a little bit of type checking and ensures that you have valid props that you're passing down. This actually isn't going to get run anywhere unless you import it into the main section of your app. So we got to go to index.js in the child app, and we're just going to import this widget. So import from widget my widget. You know, in VS Code it tells you that remove it because you're not using it anywhere, but actually you are. If you want to demonstrate that, let's do here console.log loaded my widget. Okay, so after we save this, you should see it actually says loaded my widget, and this Zoid component is this function, right? Now, if we did not include it right here, so if we were to actually comment this out, right, and it would not load that console log, which is kind of like the equivalent. So if you look in other tutorials for Zoid, you know, they'll import that script for the you know, essentially for the widget.js, or they call it like login.js or whatever. So this would be the equivalent of that, right? So that's kind of like one of the key insights from doing it this way, is that you have to import it into your index. Okay, so now that we've done that, we essentially have a React component that is also loading a Zoid component. Now, I'm simply going to take the easy path, and I'm going to copy this out, and I'm going to paste it right into the parent app's source folder. And what I'm going to do now is go to the parent app, right? And I'm going to import it. So import widget my widget. Now here's the other important thing to do. You have to turn it from a Zoid component into a React component. So the way to do that is you got to say const my React widget equals my widget dot driver. Right, driver React is the framework. I don't really know what all this means, but you got to do it. So what you have to do is you have to pretty much import React DOM like this, and then it's defined. And then we can go in here and we can say from the parent app. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a My React widget. And remember, so we have the two props. Oh, I forgot. There's one more thing that has to be done. You go to index.js in the child, right? And instead of rendering just the app, you actually have to render window.x props. It has to do with the X component, which is one of the underlying libraries that Zoid builds upon. So this will ensure that the props that you pass into the Zoid component actually get passed onto that iframe. Okay, so name equals foobar, and we'll say pass down function, which is it's better to organize this stuff instead of just keeping it all around like this. So I'm going to keep all my child app components on the right side and all my parent app components on the left side. So that way we can distinguish more easily. So here we know that the app is looking for a pass down func. So we're going to call it like this. We're going to just say something very simple like .log fired from parent. Okay. Now let's see what we're dealing with here. So let's go to our parent app. Well, look at this. My name is foobar, and sure enough, that is the name that we passed down, right? Foobar. And then for our function, let's see if this will work. Fired from parent. Fired from parent. Notice I'm doing something in a totally different. This is what I'm doing here is I'm calling this one. Like notice if I do this, nothing's gonna happen. It's gonna error out, right? So this component is hosted on a totally different domain, right? But here we're able to treat it as if it's on the same domain. It's on this. It's just another React component. So this is really nice. And of course, we're not doing anything with this, but that's essentially the crux of it. So we saw that in order to use Zoid with Create React App, there's really 5 main steps that you have to do. The first thing over here in your child app is that, well, the first step is that you have to figure out exactly what kind of props that you're expecting to get. So here it's expecting, this widget is expecting to get a name prop, and it's expecting to get a function. The second thing that you have to do is you have to define it, right? You define where it's going to be hosted. That's really important. This JavaScript file is kind of like the Zoid component definition. You have to import Zoid. In our React example, we have to not just import Zoid, but you have to import this dist/zoid.frameworks, and then export it. And then again, in your child app, you have to import it again, import that script in your index.js to actually get it to load. So that's I think 3 steps, or no, that's 2 steps. I don't know. The next step is that you bring in that same widget.js script. I mean, you could import it into this like I did right here, but that's not very realistic. What's more realistic is probably that the parent app would just import the script, and there's ways of doing that in React, which I can, which I'll link. So after you do that, you import the Zoid component, you turn it into a React component, and then you simply render the React component with the relevant properties. Now, if you look at the source code in my repository, I did a little bit more stuff with this to pretty much just make it nicer. Like it was actually like you could like you can actually type stuff into here, and then when you call this, it will like add it to, it will change the state in the parent component. But essentially, it's no different than what I'm doing right here, right? This function is being fired from the parent, and that's an important distinction to make. Oh, and then the other thing that I did was you could define the name of the child component, you can just manually input it instead of you putting it right here. But that's just kind of like a bells and whistles. But I think I've communicated across the key steps to making this work. If you have any questions or requests, please feel free to leave a comment. Thank you.